Perfect. So where's my mouse? There we go. So why this matters. So I just want to start by saying if fitness now feels harder and your health feels harder than it used to be, then you're absolutely not alone in that and you're not imagining it. A lot of us, when we hit our 30s, myself included, might suddenly feel a bit confused in our bodies, feel like we're still trying, we're still exercising, we're still making that effort, and we might not necessarily be seeing the results that we want. And it can be quite frustrating if we are successful in other areas of our lives, if we're successful in our jobs, in our relationships, in our friendships, etc. And then when it comes to our health and our fitness, what was working and now isn't working can feel quite frustrating. So I really want to use this session today to kind of help you understand what's actually happening, bit of science. I don't go too scientific though, don't worry. But more importantly, what you can do about it, because what I want you to think about is if you are thinking sort of like, oh, but this used to work. I used to be able to do all this in my 20s. Now I'm in my 30s, 40s, beyond. And now it's not working. So, and what a lot of us think when we feel like that is that we just need more discipline, more motivation. We need to go on the latest diet, whatever that might be, harder workouts. And often the issue isn't the effort we're putting in, it's the way our bodies is actually responding differently to stress and recovery and sleep that is different to when we were in our 20s. And just to then add on top of all of that, obviously we've got a little bit older, but with that might come more responsibility at work. So you have longer work days, more deadlines, that then impacts our sleep as well. We might travel more, your commute might change. I know a lot of us post-COVID moved and the whole commute, now everybody's going back to the office. There are lots of things that can be impacting our lives in work. And then we try and have a social life and a relationship, etc. on top of that. And it suddenly, it can be a lot for our bodies to take. And just one thing to know is that, unfortunately, our bodies cannot differentiate stresses from what is life, what is fitness, what is work. We just experience it as stress. So what, like I said, I really want to try and help today to help you understand what might actually be happening and what you can do about it. So one of the biggest misconceptions that I personally felt, and also I know other women feel as well, is everything goes downhill after we hit 30. That's just not actually true. Lots of things can be better, but our body is less forgiving if we have bad recovery, if we are experiencing chronic stress, and if we've got any habits that we might have been able to ride with in our 20s, might not actually be able to ride with them any further. So I just want to break this down into a few different areas. So firstly, muscle. So what we don't necessarily realize is as we age, we do naturally lose muscle. And unfortunately, in women, it can gradually happen earlier than in men, and earlier than expected if we aren't doing active strength training to support that muscle. And one thing to note, I am a firm believer in this, in what I stand for and what I do with my coaching and my clients, is muscle is way more than just aesthetics. Yes, building muscle can make us look good, but it can actually help us in more ways in our lives around bone health. We can help with our bone density, our posture, our insulin sensitivity, our general energy, mood, etc. There are loads of other things that it's actually impacting rather than just what we look like, but also long-term health as well. I don't know about you guys, but for me, I think it's really important to be able to still carry my own shopping when I'm in my 60s, still get myself up out of a chair, etc. Still have the capability to do all of those things. We need to be thinking about building muscle now for that longevity. So just to call out, if your workouts are still quite heavily cardio focused, I'm not here to tell you to stop doing cardio. I would be very hypocritical to do that. But what you do need to be thinking about is how to build and maintain muscle at the same time. So that we're kind of doing things in parallel. The next major factor is all around stress. So as I said, our bodies cannot differentiate. It's just stress. And it can be massively underestimated, especially in really ambitious, high-performing women. And our body is usually responding to work stresses, emotional stress. We might have other parts going on in our lives, family, friends, etc. If we're on a constant rush, so if we are on the constant go, that is also putting stress on our bodies. Two other things: under eating. If we aren't eating enough, we're not fueling our bodies in the right ways. That again just puts our body under more stress. But equally, the complete opposite of that, overtraining. If we are doing too much cardio, too much strength training and not recovering, again, our bodies are then reacting to that as a stress that we're not giving the recovery time. So myself included, I have felt this way before, that I feel like I'm just doing everything, but I'm just exhausted. I suffer with inflammation if I'm super tired and just feeling like stuck. And a lot of the time that's because our bodies are simply overloaded and we need to take a moment to readjust. Next bit, I just touched on this there, but the next bit is really important, is recovery. And recovery should never be seen as a weakness or that our bodies are broken. And we do need to recover, because that is really where the progress is made. In order to build muscle, we need to actually put them under the pressure and then let them recover. So we don't adapt if we won't adapt and improve with our workouts, etc., if we haven't got the resources to recover and refuel. So recovery is really, really important, more important now than it probably was in our 20s, when we could just go to the pub and then get up the next day and go for a run and do all the things we could do. Recovery now is even more important. And then the final bit is, of course, hormones. This is getting more attention now, which is really great. But of course, our bodies do go through hormone shifts as we age, but hormones are not the enemy. And we're definitely not doomed by our shift in our hormones. But what we just need to be thinking about is having strategies of how we can manage those changes, and how we can adapt our training and our nutrition, etc. So I'm not going to go into perimenopause or menopause here, but obviously that is a big shift in our hormones. But what we really want to be thinking about is the goal becomes around training smarter, having that better recovery. And the one thread that I will keep continuing for the duration of this class, and I will continue, it's a hill I will die on, is all around consistency. And it's about consistency over perfection. So one of the biggest mindset shifts I want you to kind of take away from this is thinking it less around what the punishment, and using fitness and exercise as a punishment, but using it as recovery and how we support our hormones to keep them balanced in the right way. So if there's one thing you take away from it, that is that. Okay, so moving on. So one thing when I was thinking about what to put into this session, I just wanted to kind of bust a few myths around some of the old school fitness advice that I certainly heard growing up. And that was around, you have to burn more, sweat more, eat less, you just got to push yourselves harder. And that probably worked when we were in our 20s, but we definitely get to a point where that no longer produces the results that we want. So just to bust a few of those, one of the biggest traps I see, and as I say, I myself have fallen foul to this, is doing too much cardio and not enough strength training. We don't need to do hours of cardio in order to burn calories. Doing excess cardio can increase those stress levels in our bodies. Cortisol levels can rise when we do excessive high intensity workouts, which can just lead to us to feeling more exhausted, hungry, less time for recovery. And actually we can't maintain muscle if we are doing excessive cardio. But I am a believer that cardio is beneficial. I run and I will always be a runner, but it's about being strategic in how your cardio supports your strength training. So I do get to a bit in these slides around how to create a program. So if you do like doing cardio, it's about fitting that around the strength training. Overstress is on our body. So it's really important to understand if there are environments that potentially put your bodies under more stress. So if you're already operating in a really high intensity environment, maybe at work or at home, if you've got a puppy like we have, kids, etc., that can just bring additional stress into our lives. So we want to think about how we then train that will be supportive of that and not adding additional stresses, because as we've said, our bodies cannot differentiate where that stress is coming from. So just a couple of things for you to think about is, if you do have stresses in your life, where are they coming from? Work, emotions, nutrition, intense training, etc. How all of those things come together. Another big issue that women can face, a lot of us are guilty of this, is the all or nothing thinking. Certainly I've done this, and I'm sure others have as well, that you tell yourself quite negative thoughts. And one thing we really want to do is change the language of how we are handling our health and our fitness. So if you're thinking that you can't do 5 workouts, there's no point. Or if you miss a week for whatever reason that might be, sickness, holidays, just life, then you failed. Again, a very negative language. Or if you're thinking, oh, I'm stressed, I just need to go harder. Again, this mindset is just increasing our inconsistency. But what we want is to have flexibility, so that we can then focus on consistency, not perfection. So in order to get long-term results, we need to be thinking in the less extremes and just thinking in small, incremental, consistent habits that we can keep going. Final point, before I get into the framework about what we can actually do about this, just the other thing to call out, and then we've touched on this already, but is around sleep and recovery. These are often treated as extras, and these really need to be part of our routine and part of the structures that we have in place. So if we feel like we are unable to do a full workout or work's too busy, sometimes the most effective thing is just the really small points. So instead of a long workout, can you just go for a run or a walk? Can you improve your sleep slightly? So what environment is your sleep? Is it dark enough? What's your downtime? Are you giving yourself, your body, time to relax before you get into bed? Can you just reduce the intensity of your workouts if things get too hectic? Do half the number of reps, do 20 minutes instead of 40, whatever that looks like. Just take everything down a notch and what that minimum health plan looks like, rather than just forcing yourself through another really exhausting workout. So what we want to do is shift our mindset from that old approach of pushing harder, doing more, burn more, into a more sustainable approach. So now we can actually talk about what can work. So just wanted to give you guys a very simple framework of what we can do instead. So the framework is built on 3 points. First point being strength, second point being steps or daily movement, and then the third being recovery. So first point, foundation of this framework is all around strength training. As we know, this can help support muscle development, but equally more help improve our overall body composition, help with our metabolism, that longevity of our health, but also building resilience as well. Mental and physical resilience, that is. So my recommendation would be to do 2 to 4 sessions a week, whatever that looks like and however that fits for you, what equipment you have, what availability and what time you have. In a few slides, I will provide a breakdown of what those sessions could look like. But ultimately, what we want to focus on is for these major movement patterns. So we want to be thinking about squats. Leg press is a very, very, very similar movement to the squat. So we want to make sure that we're including those in all of our weekly sessions. Having a hinge, so that can be our RDL or a deadlift. We want to make sure that we've got that hinge movement in as well. Then we've got push and pull. So push movements, which would be push-ups or anything that's a bench press, chest press, etc. And then pulls is that row movement. It's very good for the back. So conventional row, seated rows, lat pull downs, etc. all incorporate that pull movement. And then finally, things around our core and anything that involves a carry. These are really, really good. We all have abs. We all have those muscles. It's just about building them and training them in the same way as we would our biceps or our glutes. And incorporating core movements into all of our workouts is how we can then build that definition, build that structure, and build that core strength. Carries are also very good for posture and also just that central spine and keeping us nice and tall. So we want to make sure that we're incorporating all of those major movements. Next part of this framework is around daily movement. So walking can be really, really beneficial to help regulate stress. It's free. We just need to step out the front door. It can help with our energy levels, our recovery, and just generally staying consistent. And especially this time of the year when the weather is a little bit better, the mornings are a bit lighter, getting up and out first thing in the morning can really, really help with our circadian rhythm, which also then helps us sleep. So there's a domino effect there as well. So recommendation on number of steps between 7 and 10,000, but everybody will have their own step goal. 10,000 might be unachievable. So think about a goal that is achievable for you. If you're regularly hitting 10, 12, 15,000, maybe you need to think about different ways of doing movement as well. I'd also really recommend thinking about your step goals as a weekly average. Some of us, it's difficult to hit that every single day. But if we think about it as a whole week, it can take the pressure away from having to go out in the dark and hit those steps. If you are falling short one day, how can you increase it the next? So just something to think about. If you want a different mindset, think about it as a weekly rather than a daily target, but keeping that daily movement in, getting out and about can be really beneficial. Then the final point on the framework for us to think about is recovery and the habits that come with recovery. So we've touched on sleep is one of the biggest ones. So as I said, looking at the environment that you're sleeping in, is it too hot, too cold, too dark, not dark enough? How are you unwinding? Are you sat doom scrolling for 3 hours before you then try and go to sleep? What small habits and changes can you make to that downtime in order to help improve your sleep? That can have a massive knock-on impact onto the rest of your day. Mobility is another big one. A lot of us are guilty of not doing enough mobility and stretching. Really, really good for reducing injury risk. So something to think about when planning your week and what your workouts look like, making sure that there is enough mobility and stretching and that side of recovery. It's not just about resting and doing that active rest, but also what are we doing to support our muscles and our joints as well. And then also just managing your week, thinking about what your minimum health plan and what your minimum week might look like. What are meals that you eat on repeat? What's the minimum you can do in terms of a workout? So that when stresses are high, if you're working late, etc., you don't have to think about it. That decision fatigue is removed. So key message from that framework really is about protecting your consistency. The goal is not just to go harder. It's about being consistent. So just wanted to then touch on sort of a realistic plan for us that have high demanding careers. What could those look like? It's all well and good saying, yeah, do these workouts, but what does that look like? How could you spread your week? So one example is thinking about just generally days of the week. So on this example, thinking that you do your strength training Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you use Tuesday and Thursday as your sort of walk, mobility, recovery days. And then you use the weekends as active recovery, might go for a long walk, out on a cycle with your friends, play tennis, etc. Sort of active recovery lifestyle choices. Now, if you look at this, it does not require 6 days in the gym. We do not need to be spending 3 hours every day in the gym. It's better to spend shorter time, really focus those sessions when you are there. The other way of thinking about this, I know a lot of us have now got to go back to the office. So one way of splitting the week could be thinking home versus office days. So if you know you have more time, there's obviously a less of a commute if you're at home. So can you do your strength training on those days where you can spend 45 minutes doing those sessions? So planning your week that way round. And then when you have to go to the office, you're commuting, that might be a shorter workout or a long walk, etc. So trying to think about how your week works for you. If you now have to go to the office 3 days a week, plan your week accordingly. And then again, using the weekend for an optional session or some sort of lifestyle activity, getting out, walk the dog, out with a friend, etc. And then I thought it might be useful just to give an example of a training schedule. So this is my current split. Will caveat that this is quite an intense schedule. The last 2 weeks, I have not been able to keep to this myself because I have just been busy, I've been away, but I thought it was important just to show you a variation of what this could look like. I am currently doing 4 gym sessions and 2 runs. I am following a 5K improvement plan on Runner, but that's just a side note. But I split my sessions currently with upper and lower, and I'm splitting based on muscle groups. So this is another way of doing it. So as I said earlier, thinking about those push, pull, hinge movements, you want to be considering how you're building your plans that way. Could be upper, lower, and full body. It could be push, pull, legs, or splitting by muscle groups, as I have done here. So back and biceps, chest, triceps, and abs, quad, and then glutes is how I am now currently doing my schedule. So just to finish us off, a couple of mistakes that hopefully that framework will help you try and avoid. What we want to do is focus on progress rather than just chasing exhaustion. We don't just need to keep doing more. Focusing on the simple, sustainable habits. We don't need to be eating perfectly every day. We don't need to be hitting the gym every day because that is just not achievable. We are likely to fail if we do that, and we're just going to put our bodies under unnecessary stress. So progress over just chasing, doing more, and ended up exhausted. Starting too aggressively. Now, I think we can all say sometimes we think, oh, I'm just going to start this. I'm going to start going to the gym at 5 a.m. I'm going to track every calorie. I'm going to be out walking 12,000 steps. It's too aggressive. It's too many things all at the same time. And when we try and do too much, we are likely, again, to fail doing that. So I want you to think about what can you do? Small, simple steps. Pick one thing, focus on that first, then slowly add in others. Another mistake that we make is constantly changing our plan. So if you build that program, you've got your workouts, do them for more than a week. We need to overload our bodies. We need to keep going with them. If we're constantly changing, it's very, very difficult to build muscle, to see that progress. So be consistent and keep at it for at least 6 weeks before you're then changing. Another mistake a lot of us are guilty of is measuring our success by the dreaded scales in the bathroom. We want to measure our success by more than just our weight take the photos, grab the tape measure. These are much better success measures for us, give us a much more holistic view of our overall health and well-being. And then finally is ignoring that recovery. As we've said, as we get older, we really need to be incorporating more recovery. This is not a weakness, and we should be using this to help our bodies recover and refuel. So just to round things off, the goal is not to train harder now that we are not in our 20s anymore. What we really want to do is train in a way that our bodies can actually recover, bodies can refuel, using strength training and cardio strategically together, so we can then see overall progress. Fat loss comes in the messy bit in between this. So much of with that all or nothing thinking is very black and white, it's very negative, but progress is really made in that messy bit in the middle, in the sort of grey area. And if we have a bad week due to holidays, sickness, etc., then it's how quickly we can bounce back from that. And having that very simple framework in place can help us to bounce back quickly. We can recover, we can put ourselves back into the rhythm of doing our workouts, and therefore we can see more progress. Great. So that is a lot of talking from me. So I will pause there and open the floor if anybody has any questions or anything they would like to discuss any further.
Oh, hi, Kerry. Can you hear me?
I can now, yes, Caroline.
I just wanted to say that was so helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
It was like the best thing for me was seeing like how you break your week down, but also thinking about how you do the exercises. So actually breaking them up into that groups,
Yeah,
because sometimes like you go to the gym and you feel like you've got to do a full body workout every time you go. And if you don't do it, then you kind of failed. And actually, it was really great to see it like that.
yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. And there are different ways you can skin a cat, basically. There are different ways of cutting it. But yeah, there are a couple of mechanisms. So yeah, that push pull, legs, upper, lower, full body. That way can also give you real focus in those sessions as well. So for example, like I did my back session today, so I know I'm going in and I'm doing those exercises and these are the muscles that I'm working. It can help be really focused when you are doing said session.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Oh, no, it
Caroline.
was great. Thank you.
You're welcome.